This will be one of several videos that will show you how to create the pergola per the assignment we're working on. So what I'm going to do first is to start by laying out the column arrangement for these. We want to make this a pergola that has 6 columns total. Something in the area of say 12 feet by 24 feet would be fine. You could change the size on it if you want to, just so long as things are equalized and it makes sense to you. Think backyard, small barbecue covered area or something like that. So to lay out the columns, I'm going to switch to the structural tab, and then I'm going to select the column tool. And then looking at the type selector under properties here, I can see if I drop this down, I only have W shapes to work with. I don't want to use that. I want to use timber for this pergola. So I'm going to click the load family button. Notice too that while I'm here, the vertical column is the way I'm going to place these, which is the way I want to do that. So I'm going to click the load family tool, and then I'm going to browse inside of the default US Imperial folder to the structural columns folder. Double click that. There are different types of columns I could use. I want to use a wood column, so I'll double click that. And then inside of here there are different types of lumber from dimensional, that's sawn lumbers like 2x4s, 2x10s, that sort of thing, for studs and framing. Glulams, parallel strand lumber, and timber. So I'm going to select the timber lumber, although I could find what I'm looking for in dimensional lumber too, but I'll use timber. And then from here, I'm going to select the only one I'm going to use for this assignment would be a 6x6. I'm going to click OK. And now if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see as I do so, the column gets much bigger because I'm zooming closer and closer to it. So what I want to do is I want to place 6 of these. Notice on the option bar we have some options here. Most engineers, and that's kind of what you're playing the part of right now, an engineer, think from the top down when it comes to placing elements because that's the way they analyze gravity loads inside of a building. So what I want to do is think from the bottom up because I know I'm drawing on level 1. So I'm going to change the placement option here from depth, which would make the column go below the level that I'm placing it on, to height, which means it's going to move up from there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the height on it from an unconnected height of 9 feet. I'm going to change it to level 2. That way I can change the height of level 2 or the elevation of level 2, and the height of the columns will automatically change. So now I want to place 6 of them in here. So it's pretty easy simply to click to place these. I'm not even worried about aligning them or anything there. I intentionally made that one a little bit off, because it's a good practice when you place things to then use your dimensioning and aligning tools to make things work the way you expect them to. Now that's one way to place these columns. I'm going to show you in another way using the grid system how to place these as well, slightly differently. So now I can go ahead and dimension these. So I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see that each column will have a horizontal and vertical element on them. I'm going to select this vertical plane and then select this one here and then drop that dimension there for now. And then I'm going to select the horizontal one. You can always tab select them if it doesn't show up very easily. Place this here and then equalize those. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place a dimension to control the overall dimension on these ones. So now that I've got that selected, I can select this column here and tell those columns to be a distance of maybe 24 feet. So now you can see it's 12 feet exactly between each column. And then I can pick this column here and make that a distance of 12 feet as well. Right? So now what I want to do is I want to fix these columns so they align with each other. So I will go to my Align tool. I'll do that by going to the Modify tab and then choosing the Align tool. You can always type in the keyboard shortcut AL to do this as well. I'll pick this first column here, and before I do that, I want you to notice there's a multiple alignment here. I want to make certain I have the ability to multiply align different objects simultaneously within the same function here. So it's really easy to forget about checking this and then having to go through and realigning things. So do yourself a favor when you have a lot of alignments to make, check multiple alignments, and I'll show you how you use it to do multiple alignments. So the first thing I'm going to do is align, this one is my starting point, and then I want this column here to align with it. And then I'm going to lock it. Now when I drew these, they were aligned with this reference line, but if one of these were to move, they're not locked in alignment. So you want to make certain you align and lock things. So they're in pretty good shape now. Now what I want to do is I want to click in the middle of nowhere. If you don't click in the middle of nowhere, if I were to click on this one next, this column would move up to this location. So by clicking in the middle of nowhere, it temporarily removes your alignment, datum if you will, and it allows you to pick a new point. So now I'm going to pick this one here, and then I'll pick this one here. I'll lock that. I'll click in the middle of nowhere, and then pick my last one here, and this one here, and lock that. So now those align nicely horizontally. I want to do the same thing vertically. And here's where multiple alignment's really handy to use. I'm going to come back up to here, pick this vertical one, pick this one, lock it, and now I don't click in the middle of nowhere. Now I intentionally click on this line here and lock it. Now all of those are perfectly aligned. Do the same thing here. That time I clicked in the middle of nowhere, pick this one, lock it. Don't click in the middle of nowhere, this one, and lock it. So now I've got these things constrained so that they all behave nicely, and if I were to go in here and change this dimension to say 9 feet, you can see those all change correspondingly, and maybe change this one to 18 feet, and you can see all of my columns align and move properly with one another. I'll show you another way to do this over here using the grid system. So I'll go back to the structure tab, I'll pick the grid tool here, and I will go ahead and click up here and place a grid 1 in here, and then a grid 2. I'm carefully choosing where I click so it aligns with my last one. Then I'm going to go ahead and place a grid out here. You'll notice that changes to 3, but if I click on this grid and type in a value like A, it will automatically change to an A there, and then the next grid I make will be B. So there's B, and then lastly here's C. And if you use upper and lower case, it knows what to do there. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and place dimensions on here. Same way of working, so except I'm dimensioning my grids now. And I want to equalize these ones. So I'll select my modify tool and equalize these. And then I can select this grid and maybe make this 18 feet again. And so each one of those is 9. I can select this grid here and make this 9 feet maybe. So now you can see I've got my grid in place here. And this is something you would typically often want to do if you were working with a building that had a lot of grids and things in it, where everything was based off of a grid basically. So now I can place my columns here. All I have to do this is go back to my structure tab, select my column tool again, use the @grid option here, select all of these, and you can see based on the type selector and the settings that were available for that, it's placing the columns here. And then real importantly, you have to tell it to finish. So I'm going to click the finish tab, and now you can, or button, and now you can see I've got an extra set of column grids there. So now I have essentially 2 pergolas here that I could be working on simultaneously if I wanted to, but that's just 2 ways of approaching the placement on the columns. Next thing I'll do is I'll place the beams. I'm only going to work on this one here. So I'll go ahead and select my beam tool, and you'll notice again it's using a W-shaped beam, and if I drop this down I don't have any reasonable beams to use for this particular wooden pergola. So I'm going to click the load family once again. I'm still in the structural column folder, so I need to go up once, twice, and now I can go down to the structural framing folder. So there's no structural beam folder. A beam is considered just a framing member. So framing, wood, and then I'll use timber again. That way it has the same material. And in this case I'm going to pick a few of these, so I'll hold down Control and pick those 3 maybe. I could have picked, with the Shift key, I could have clicked on the last one as well. The Control key allows you to grab differently sized ones, so if I decided I needed, this 6 by 24, I could select that, or you can unselect it again if you need to by holding down Control. I'll click OK. Maybe I want this 6 by 6 as well. Who knows, maybe I want to do some webbing or a truss or something. I'll click OK. That will load all of those beams in here. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and draw my beams that go the long way this way and will stick out cantilever on both sides of these columns, and then the short way between them. So to do this easily, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable 3D snapping. So on the option bar, I'm first going to tell it the placement of these is basically on level 2. and then I'm going to enable the 3D snapping. I'm not going to enable chaining because I want to draw these long beams separately first. So now if I move to the top of this column, you'll see there's a point snap that I can grab here. Left click there, left click here. I'll come over to this one, left click here, left click here. I'll go ahead and draw these ones while I'm here because I'm in the same beam drawing mode. Okay. And I noticed that if I look here, I can see that those are all 6x6s. I should have checked my beam size, not a problem. All I have to do is select all of these beams. I'll do that by right mouse clicking on top of a selected one, and I'll tell it to select all instances visible in view. So that'll grab all of the beams of the same size. And now I can simply drop this down and tell it to make it all 6x12. Next thing I want to bring to your attention is that right now there's a conflict between where these posts stop and where the bottoms of these beams. So I have a couple options here. I can either make the posts stop at the bottom of these, or I can take these beams and flip the direction so that instead of the line that I drew being along the top of them, it's on the bottom of them instead. I'm going to opt for that option. So I'm going to select one, right mouse click, select all instances again, visible in view. Then I can come over here, and on properties you will notice that there is a Z justification option here. Right now it's set to top. If I drop that down, I can check bottom, click apply, and now you can see all of the beams flipped upwards, and they're facing the right direction for me to use. Next thing I'm going to do is select both of these beams because each of these beams right now stops at the face of the object that you placed it on. So what I want to do is I actually want to send these beams cantilevering outside of these a little bit. The easiest way to do that is to use the cutback method here. So the cutback is a way of telling a beam that you want it to be cut back from a certain face that it might be normally wanting to hit and land on. You might do this, let's say if there's a wood member that it attaches to, or if there's a heavy metal plate there that it needs to be bolted to with some kind of a fancy connector. So we can use the cutback to extend as well, except instead of giving it a positive value, because it's a cutback, we give it a negative value. So I'm going to type in -2 feet for both of these values here, and click apply, and now you can see I have a cantilever on my beams for purposes of supporting rafters that stick out beyond the face of this beam, and also for allowing me to do a decorative cut on this beam as well. So let me stop there. The next video I make will look at taking those beams and maybe putting a decorative cut on them, and then continuing with the king post to support a ridge beam and building a roof as well and rafters.